get an alert that you're going to get that. You can X out of that thing on your screen if you want. It's totally up to you.
Sure.
It's again, I don't see it. So.
All right. Okay, perfect.
I know you're a pro, so I'm sure we can just jump right in. Why don't we start with this? There's a lot of people out there who say, I don't care about the impact on any families at home. This guy is plastered all over video, attacking our Capitol, being the tip of the spear. Let him rot in jail. Just your thoughts on people feeling that way and whether they're justified or it makes sense or they're right to feel that way.
Really, the impact on families, him being in custody, and in solitary for 23 hours a day, that's not relevant to the legal analysis. The only two factors that a court is to consider is risk of flight and danger to the community. I mean, here's someone who disappeared for a couple of days, but ultimately turned himself in to the FBI through his attorney. So he's not really a risk of flight, no criminal history. But so we need to focus on that danger to the community analysis. And is the fact that someone attacks a Capitol police officer, forcibly takes his riot shield, uses that shield to break a window and enter the Capitol building, is that enough for a district judge to consider that individual a danger to the community? And that's really all that matters. Everything else is just noise and not relevant to the analysis.
And then you also remember the fact that they found apparently a flash drive that may have had bomb-making materials on it. Do you think this is a close call, or do you think that this guy needs to stay in jail?
I think he needs to stay in jail, but the defense certainly has a good argument. Now, he had plenty of time to scrub his house of any weapons, firearms, anything like that. But he did have that anarchist cookbook, that sort of bomb-making manual on that thumb drive. So it is enough evidence, in my opinion, for a district judge to hold him in custody through trial. I mean, someone that has that material on their computer, that's not something that you download accidentally. I mean, these are really sort of fringe people, and this was really an act of terrorism, and someone that would have taken it further had he had the opportunity to do so.
445 different defendants now. Judges are all seeing this through their own prism. Is part of the challenge that there is no consistent barrier on what is going to be detention and what is going to be pretrial release?
No question, that's a challenge here, and each judge is going to view this through his or her own political lens. Judges rarely have to make calls like this where they have to decide the facts. That's something that a jury usually does, and judges are the referees. But when it comes to bail issues, whether it's a magistrate judge or a district judge, they need to decide, they need to review the facts and decide whether someone is a danger to the community. And certain judges will view things very differently than others.
One could make the argument that this has been happening to defendants of color for decades, and the only reason we're even talking about it now is because so many of these defendants are white.
No question. I mean, one of the things the federal sentencing guidelines are to do is to get rid of these unwarranted sentencing disparities where you have someone that is arrested with a certain volume of a particular drug, and he or she receives a very different sentence from someone in another jurisdiction or someone with a different skin color. But there's no guidelines or there's no rule book for something like this. It's really unprecedented where you have these folks who are attacking law enforcement, entering the Capitol building, disrupting Congress. There's really no precedent for this. And that's why these judges are having such a difficult time. And we're seeing so many different decisions here.
Are you in the camp that this whole idea of pretrial release and how it is approached and ruled on by judges needs to have a fresh set of eyes about whether or not we need to be detaining people, whether it's this case or a case in downtown DC addressing somebody, a person of color or somebody from a different socioeconomic background? Is it time to look at this in a broader sense?
I agree. In certain states, for instance, here in California, there is a uniform bail schedule where, depending on the crime, there will be a certain bail amount. Obviously, judges can deviate as appropriate, but there really is no uniform standard when it comes to pretrial detention here in the United States in our federal system. There's certainly factors for judges to consider, and there's precedent and appellate opinions, but it's quite unlike the sentencing guidelines where you really have a specific range, and judges, if they're going to deviate from that range, they have to articulate a clear reason for doing so.
So there's just so many variables here. And then you mix in the fact that a lot of these defendants really do have no criminal history. So they're accused of pretty serious crimes, complicated by the fact that many of them had what are being referred to as unremarkable lives before this.
I mean, it's a challenge, right? You're dealing with folks that many of them are former military, some of them are former law enforcement, but they have these really strong held political beliefs that cause them to engage in very violent conduct. And if it wasn't for the brave work of the Capitol Police, who knows what would have happened to our members of Congress and what would have happened to our Capitol building. So even though their past may have been clean and there was really no sort of criminal conduct like this, the actions in this case were so egregious and so outrageous, it'd be very difficult for a judge to release the most violent of these individuals back into the community, because let's not forget, this big lie is still being perpetuated. We have someone who is currently in office, President Biden, who many of these people believe stole the election. So there's still a risk to our democracy and to the public at large.
Professional and right on point as always. Did I miss anything that you had prepared that I didn't tee you up for?
No, you hit it on the head, but really it's a big issue where you have basically, and each state is different. So like, for instance, in California, you have a right to strike a judge if you think he or she is unfair, but you can't do that in the federal system. So many times folks are being detained merely because they happen to get the wrong judge. If it were a different judge, he or she would be granted pretrial release. So,
and you're speaking in a larger sense, but the same is true of the Capitol riot cases, right?
Absolutely, no question. That's what I think one of the things that would really help improve our federal criminal justice system is to give both parties just one right to strike a judge, use a peremptory, like we like to call it. That will hold judges accountable and also create fairness for folks that may have just gotten a bad draw.
Can you explain, before I let you go, the strike a judge thing? I'm not sure I understand what you're talking about.
So in certain states like California, if you're in California state court, each party has a right to strike a judge. That means remove that judge for any reason or no reason at all. You get one opportunity. That holds judges accountable and also creates a sense of fairness, because in the federal system where that opportunity is not there, people are stuck with that judge regardless of whether he or she is fair. And those are life appointments on the federal side. They can really only be removed by Congress if they're impeached. And that's very, very uncommon. So I think a system like that would give the parties a strike, just one strike, would help restore some fairness for some of those judges on both extremes that can be a little bit perceived to be unfair.
Much like a jury selection where you can strike a juror, right?
Exactly.
Great.
Same thing. It's called the
Great job. Great job as always. I'll let you move on to your next thing. I've got plenty. This is still in flux. I still am trying to lock down the interview with the family. Even if they pull out, I'm probably, because I had another great conversation with the prosecutor. I'm using two sources on this. So this is just a great conversation. So this will be used in one way or another. I'll keep in touch with you and email you and let you know when the finished product is there and give you the clip.
Of course. Thanks for having me as always. And thanks for just letting me know when it's up and running.
Yes, my friend. I'll see you the next time.
All right. Have a great day.
All right, you too. Bye.